Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined in this episode by Colonel Philip Blair, MD, who's the founder of Blair Medical Group. How are you keeping today, Philip?
I'm doing great.
It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I know you're a very busy man, so thank you very much for taking your time to do this. Do you mind if you want to give everybody a brief overview? I know your career is so extensive and you've touched on so many things. Can you maybe just brief it down to how you ended up getting into working on CBR endocannabinoid receptors?
Okay, well, I went to medical school at University of Miami. I did family practice a training, and I was in the Army for about 30 years. In 2014, I was introduced to cannabidiol, and I did the research on it. I was amazed at the particular benefits. I've treated several thousand people with cannabidiol. But in about 3 years ago, I discovered and I learned about the extensive interactions with the endocannabinoid system, and with one specific terpene that is actually an endocannabinoid activator called beta-caryophyllene.
Okay, the work you're doing is very exciting because I think everybody, if you peel back the cannabis industry, that the big gains and the big revolutions are going to come from the endocannabinoid receptors and those people who can target these receptors for a multitude of different ailments. Do you maybe want to bring everybody up to speed as what are endocannabinoid receptors, how many there are, and the health benefits that they pertain?
Sure, I can touch upon that. Now, the endocannabinoid system is quite extensive. It's really the master regulator for all the other systems. It maintains the homeostasis within our body. It regulates the other systems of the body. So that means the immune system, the neurotransmitters, the digestive system, all sorts of systems within the body, our urinary system, our cardiovascular. All these systems are regulated in part by this endocannabinoid system that is an interactive, a bidirectional interaction, so that there's input and output coming in and going out through this system. Now, it's not been recognized until about 1994 that it was an entire system of its own, but it has a regulating factor for many of the different major consequences of the body. So our mood, our nervous system, our immunity, our gastrointestinal tract are all regulated in part by this system. So that means inflammation is a key factor for the regulation of the endocannabinoid system. So the main receptors are the type 1 the cannabinoid type receptor and the cannabinoid type 2 receptor. But there are a host of other receptor systems, receptors that are in this system, and it's been termed as the endocannabinoid dome because of the breadth of the receptor systems and transmitters that work within the system. So the major transmitters are anandamide, which is AEA, and 2-AG are the major ligands that connect up to these receptors. But there's a host of other receptor systems and agonists that occur. OEA, which is oleol ethanolamide, and palmitoyl ethanolamide, PEA, are receptor systems or ligands that connect up to these receptors as well. And there are also receptor systems called the PPAR receptors that also link to the body and have amazing immunity effects as well as metabolic effects. And so all of these systems are integrated so closely that it's hard to separate them out. But the major factor is that endocannabinoid disruption or its dysfunction in the endocannabinoid system leads to most of our chronic diseases.
Okay, very interesting. So the types of drug discovery and development that are happening at the moment, those targeting various CB1 and CB2 receptors. We know, for example, CBG is an agonist for the CB2 receptor. What is a perfect agonist for the CB1 receptor? And are the most advanced drug discovery and development processes working on either CB1 or CB2 receptors?
Well, the CB1 receptors tend to be our psychoactive receptors, also inflammatory receptors. And the CB1 receptors, unfortunately, have a lot of adverse effects, and they can create psychosis and some dysfunction. So they're also associated with inflammatory disorders such as liver disease. So you want to be careful about the type 1 receptors. And so The THC is a classic of a type 1 receptor agonist, in which we've been involved with for the last 20 years in terms of orchestrating different connections to that. And it's regarded as a very negative sign. Whereas the CB2 receptor is the one that it controls the inflammation, and it has neurologic impacts as well. So most of the research, there's 35 products that are in the pipeline, the pharmaceutical pipeline, on cannabinoid type 2 receptor agonists and chemicals that are being produced in this regard. Now, we already have, we got a number of products that are actually available naturally. Palmethylethanolamide, PEA, and OEA, oleol ethanolamide, are available as a cannabinoid substances that work on the CB2 receptor and other systems as well. And one of the terpenes that is found in cannabis, but it's also found in numerous other vegetables, is caryophyllene. And caryophyllene is a superb terpene, which is a simple oil that is found in basil, oregano, cloves, grapefruit, guava, and avocado. And this particular terpene has amazing a receptor system activation of cannabinoid type 2 receptors and a host of other agonists within the endocannabinoid that will modulate inflammation, pain, and neurodegenerative diseases as well. Now, Blair Medical Group has developed a product based on the caryophyllene in particular, that is showing stunning results in terms of inflammation, pain, and neuropathy, as well as behavioral disorders, and including allergy phenomena. So there's a lot of pharmaceutical products going on, but we've actually produced a number of products using terpenes that have amazing properties for activating the endocannabinoid system and upregulating the system so that it improves these dysfunctional endocannabinoid disorders that are very common in our chronic lifestyle situations.
We hear a lot about the health benefits of terpenes and how important they are to the overall entourage effect that we get in cannabis. Is the future of the most optimum drugs going to be single molecules blended into formulations that are targeting one specific thing acutely, or is the full spectrum plant solution always going to be the best option?
It's always going to be the full spectrum. What we found in our history of pharmaceutical development is that single targeting elements miss a major modulating features that need to be there, so that a single target is not good enough. What we need are multiple targets, and a full spectrum is going to be the best. Now, so what we've combined the caryophyllene with hemp oil, phenola hemp oil, which is a high quality omega-3 oil with a blend of different products, different polyphenols that add to the benefits, so that it's a full spectrum potential, and it has an amazing properties to regulate all systems. And so the targeted functionality of pharmaceutical industry I think is misaligned, and we're learning more and more about that. For instance, cannabidiol was developed as a formulary individualized product, and the requirement for controlling epilepsy really requires on the order of a huge amount of cannabidiol in its pure form in order to benefit and control epilepsy. Whereas in a full spectrum, you have 1/10 of the amount is required. So we're getting a lot better effects from the full spectrum, from the biologically derived substances. And those tend not to be the pharmaceutical varieties.
What place do biotechnology companies that use fermentation and biosynthesis have in the role of producing rare molecules? Is that an option for the industry moving forward as a solution to get better and more advanced products out to patients?
Well, if they're combined with other these other products, these other benevolent substances, I think they could be. For instance, if you could combine CBG with some of the other compounds that are available with terpenes or with other cannabinoids, then you're going to get a fuller spectrum and you're going to get a wider breadth of benefits. And you're going to decrease the adverse effects from it, because many people, the body system is very complex, and we don't have not everybody is made up the same way. And so that you're going to have get a different response per individual. And if you have a blend of these products, you're going to target many of the benefits, and you're going to miss and you're going to avoid the adverse effects from the complications of these individualized targeted substances.
Next topic I wanted to move on to before we end is systematic inflammation. As we know, inflammation seems to be the cause of 80% or more different medical conditions. How well do the agonists targeting the CB2 receptor for inflammation work? And do you see inflammation being more advantageous than, let's say, pain relief when it comes to targeting these receptors and future medicines for patients out there?
Well, for the CB2 receptor is actually a neuroagonist, and it regulates the neuropathic methods and mechanisms, as well as the immune mechanisms. That's not widely recognized. Generally, CB2 receptor is regarded as being minor in the brain. It's just as the population in the normal brain is quite low. But when we get inflammatory diseases of the brain, then that population accelerates, and we have a large population. And it is very responsive to cannabinoid type 2 receptor systems that benefit and reduce the inflammation, as well as the neuroregulation on those systems. So I want to emphasize that the CB2 receptor is neurologic as well as immunologic. Now, in the immunologic area, CB2 receptors are located on every one of our immune cells, no matter what system it is, whether it's the brain, the kidney, the liver, in the blood system. So every one of our immune cells has this receptor. And when you target that receptor and you create an agonist effect, then you get a cascade of immunologic system that shifts the immunologic system. I don't want to say disables it, because it actually shifts it from the M1, which is the activated inflammatory stage, to the M2 stage, which is the resolution and the healing phase of immunity. And because it does that, then it doesn't impair immunity, but it shifts it to the healing phase, and it deactivates many of the cytokines and the inflammatory substances, as well as the macrophages that are being invasive. It also regulates the invasion of macrophages into areas that are involved with the inflammation. So it's going to regulate the migration of these cells into inflammatory areas and it's going to decrease it's going to decrease the permeability of these membranes and these blood vessels to prevent leakage of these substances. And that goes for the gut, as well as the immune system and the blood-brain barrier and the eye barriers as well. One of the particular areas that we found with caryophyllene is that it targets eye disease very specifically. And I've seen incredible responses for macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy, which is a horrible problem to deal with, and we're getting more and more of it. And it targets this area specifically for regulating the eye disease and all of retinopathy.
It's a very intriguing subject so far, and I think the amount of progress that is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be pretty incredible to watch. Do you think R&D approved at a governmental level is crucial to developing these new drugs that are going to benefit patients across the board, or do you think private enterprise is going to be still able to do these regardless of the legislation that happens in various countries?
I think it's going to be private enterprise. I don't think it's going to be major marketing. The drugs are going to be coming out are going to be isolates, and they've already been fraught with difficulties in terms of complications from their single target measures. So I think with naturally occurring cannabinoids and terpenes, I think there's a great market for this, and I think there's a great benefit that's going to occur. There isn't any limit to how much people can take of these caryophyllene and these molecules. We just have to get it into the legal framework. Unfortunately, hemp is hemp products are being maligned in a number of ways, and they're restricted, so that we can turn to terpenes, which are normally available in other substances that could provide additional benefits.
Dr. Blair, it's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you, and I hope we can touch base in the next 6 to 12 months and get an update on the amazing work you guys are doing at Blair Medical Group. And thank you very much for your time today.
Well, I just want to mention one other thing is that drcanna.com is offering the beta-caryophyllene product in the UK and Ireland.
Well, we'll get a link and post that in the description. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify, the link to that will be in the description. But thank you very much for your time today, Dr. Blair. It's very much appreciated.
My pleasure. Excellent questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Until next episode, everybody.